stupid, dumb girl apologized to Kyungo and told him that she wanted to end things there. Her words came abruptly, and they left Kyungo visibly shaken. He had not expected her decision to be so firm. She reminded him that she had already mentioned this before, that she had gone on a blind date recently. Kyungo silently acknowledged it, knowing that she was right. She then explained that the blind date had happened because a sister had begged her repeatedly for help, and at first, she had been very reluctant to go. Lowering her voice, she instructed Kingo to do the same, warning him that people around them were listening. She admitted that her mood had been unpleasant in the beginning, but the man she met turned out to be much better than she had expected. Despite being the CEO of a venture company, he was surprisingly easygoing, approachable, and matched her energy well. She went on to say that they would soon be entering their 4th year next year and that it was time for her to prepare for the future. They could not continue dating like careless kids forever. For that reason, she told Kyungo that he needed to stop clinging to the past and pull himself together. She believed that this separation would ultimately help him mature. Kyungo stood there, lost in his thoughts, until her voice called him back to reality. He snapped out of it and apologized, saying he was just a little flustered. After saying everything she wanted to say, the girl told him that she wanted to hear his final words. Kyungo responded calmly that if she was determined to leave, he would no longer try to stop her. However, after a moment of hesitation, he asked if they could do one last thing together. Confused by his request, the girl asked what he meant. Kingo explained that he wanted them to do their cardio training together one last time, as a kind of farewell gift. At this, the girl stood up from her seat. Looking at him with pity, she thought that Kyungo would remain miserable until the very end. Turning away in anger, she left as Kyungo tried to call her back. Overcome with frustration, Kyungo slammed the table down, startling the waitress and drawing worried glances from nearby customers. He was consumed by bitterness as he thought about how he had worked tirelessly at his part-time job just to buy her an anniversary gift, only to be repaid with a breakup. In his anger, he cursed her and bitterly wished her good luck with her CEO boyfriend, vowing to erase her from his mind at the speed of light. At that moment, he imagined her clinging to him, stopping him from drinking any more alcohol. In his imagination, he replied that he would stop once he finished his food. When reality returned, he bit his lip hard, overwhelmed by both anger and sorrow, realizing just how much he missed her. As he continued drinking, he muttered curses, wishing that his friend would not arrive yet. Suddenly, someone grabbed him tightly from behind by the neck, causing him to spill his drink. The girl scolded him sharply for calling a busy person to come here, yet at the same time dared him to drink more. Kyungo shot back that she was not busy at all. In fact, she was the most idle person in the world. His remark only made her angrier, and she began teasing him loudly, drawing the attention of everyone around them. This girl was Min Songa, Kyungo's friend. She was a freshman who had entered the Western painting department in the academic year 2017. Kyungo had first met her at a freshman party. She had been beautiful, bright, and confident with a striking figure. While most of the others at the party tried to use alcohol to create chaos, Songa stood out. Thanks to Kyungo's high alcohol tolerance from high school, he ended up competing with her in a drinking contest. One by one, all the boys lost, until only one remained, Kyungo himself. When another boy pointed toward him, Songa greeted him bluntly by calling him a bastard. In response, Kyungo calmly introduced himself. She immediately challenged him to a duel, declaring that whoever passed out first would be the loser. Kyungo refused the challenge, but from that day onward, the two of them became drinking buddies. As they clinked their glasses now, Sing loudly declared that she had already warned Kingo about his ex-girlfriend, that the girl was just a player and had never truly been interested in him. She spoke so loudly that everyone nearby turned to stare, her voice echoing through the room. Song reprimanded Kongo harshly, reminding him that he should have listened to her advice earlier. Instead, he had always acted according to his own wishes, and in the end, he had been betrayed by his ex-girlfriend. Kongo, already irritated, told Song to lower her voice. Rather than calming down, Song grew louder. She deliberately drew the attention of everyone in the pub and openly announced that Kongo was nothing more than an idiot who had been dumped by a girl, mocking him and telling the crowd to look at his foolish face. Enraged, Kongo shouted at Sung to stop her childish behavior. Their argument continued to escalate until a waiter approached Kongo and politely asked him to leave, explaining that the disturbance was affecting other customers. After a brief pause, both Sung and Kongo exited the pub together. Outside, Kongo complained that because of Sung, he had not even managed to get properly drunk. Song, on the other hand, confidently insisted that he had not drunk as much as he wanted anyway. Suddenly, she placed her hand on his shoulder and casually suggested that they continue drinking at her place. Kungo hesitated at first, eventually agreed. They went to Song's house and continued drinking. By the time they finished nearly 10 bottles, Song admitted that she was finally starting to feel drunk. Kungo scolded her, rudely telling her to mind her manners and claiming that her behavior was the reason she did not have a boyfriend. Song, however, responded with confidence, stating that many men liked her and that Kungo could not understand such things because he was still bitter over being dumped. Kungo lost his temper and threatened her, but moments later, he smiled and dismissed his own anger, saying that alcohol made people forget things easily. He then made a bet, declaring that Song would remain single until graduation. Song shrugged and replied that it did not matter anyway, and that there was no point arguing over it. Hearing this, Kungo burst into laughter. Song remarked that the two of them always became overly excited whenever they talked about their weapons, referring to their sharp words. Kungo sighed and muttered that perhaps women behaved this way too, claiming that all women were the same. He bitterly spoke about his ex-girlfriend who had abandoned a 3-year relationship simply because she wanted to act like a CEO. To him, this proved that all women were alike. Song immediately shouted back, arguing that not all women were the same. Just because his ex-girlfriend was manipulative did not mean everyone else was. Kungo refused to accept this. Sung angrily insisted that his thinking was wrong, stating that men were often attracted to women simply because they felt happiness and excitement around them, not because of deep emotions. As Kungo continued to deny her words, Sung suddenly pulled him closer and challenged him, proposing a bet about who would get excited first. Kungo remained silent for a moment before loudly demanding a prize, 50,000 won and bread. This led to a chaotic wrestling match between them. The next morning, Kungo's alarm rang loudly at 9 o'clock. He panicked when he realized he was late for class. While rushing out, he thought about how he was always late for Professor Cha Do-yeon's lectures and feared that missing another class would surely result in failure. Lost in his thoughts, he collided with a girl, causing her to fall as her books scattered across the ground. Kungo immediately apologized, though he became flustered when his gaze accidentally dropped toward her skirt. The girl also apologized and asked if he was all right. Kungo offered to help her, but she politely declined. At that moment, Sung arrived and walked past him without saying a word. Kungo quickly helped the girl anyway and called out to Sung. When she did not stop, his frustration grew. Eventually, Sung halted, clearly annoyed, and said they needed to talk. Kungo replied that he had to attend class and added that his legs still hurt from the previous night. Sung showed concern for his condition, appearing conflicted and confused about what had happened between them. Kungo felt a creeping suspicion settle in her mind, as though the girl outside truly did not remember something important. Before she could dwell on the thought, the faint sound of approaching footsteps reached her ears. Two voices echoed down the hallway, growing clearer with every step. Reacting on instinct, Kungo immediately pulled back into the shadows, hiding herself without hesitation. Sung followed her a second later, tucking herself into the same concealed space just as a boy and a girl entered the clubroom. The girl hesitated near the doorway, her eyes scanning the room as unease flickered across her face. She whispered that she was not entirely sure whether someone might already be inside. The boy, however, dismissed her worries with casual confidence, gesturing around the empty space and explaining that the clubroom was almost always deserted at that hour. Even so, the girl's nervousness did not fade easily. She voiced her fear that someone could arrive at any moment. The boy reassured her again, telling her not to worry and urging her to relax. Meanwhile, hidden from sight, Kungo remained tense and confused, silently questioning why they were hiding in the first place. When she glanced at Sung for an explanation, Sung responded lightly that Kungo had hidden first, and she had simply followed along without much thought. Outside their hiding place, the boy and the girl soon immersed themselves in their workout, their playful wrestling turning the quiet room into a scene of lively movement and exertion. Time passed as they trained together, seemingly unaware of the silent observers nearby. Once they finished, the boy casually suggested going out for a drink after class, his tone hopeful. The girl declined without hesitation, explaining that she already had plans and was meeting a friend for a date. From within the shadows, Sung let out a quiet laugh, muttering that the boy was nothing more than a convenient tool for cardio. Kungo, overhearing everything, clenched her fists and cursed them under her breath, irritation simmering as she remained hidden, watching the scene unfold in unwanted silence. Kungo once again brought up what had happened the previous night, but the mention only irritated Sung further. She turned away sharply and reminded him that she had an important class to attend, clearly unwilling to continue the discussion. The moment Kungo heard this, panic seized him. He suddenly realized the seriousness of his situation and bolted off like a madman, fully aware that he was heading straight toward major trouble. Later that evening, Kungo was sitting at a bar called Da Beer, drinking heavily alongside his male friend. His friend tried to comfort him, casually saying that failing one subject was not the end of the world and that no one died just because they received an F grade. However, Kungo, already frustrated and overwhelmed, shouted at him to shut up. He snapped that his friend could never understand his feelings, especially since he was someone who failed so often that grade meant nothing to him anymore. Offended, but still joking, the friend told Kungo not to attack him with such brutal honesty. Despite the tension, the friend claimed he had a solution to avoid failing the subject. Lowering his voice as if sharing a dangerous secret, he mentioned that he had heard rumors about Professor Cha Doyan, the same professor who had failed him before. According to the gossip, she was extremely dissolute. He added that Kungo must have heard of Jung Seok-hyung, a fourth-year student who had skipped most of his classes to prepare for a competition. Supposedly, Jung Seok had slept with Professor Cha Doyon and, as a result, managed to secure a B-plus grade. Kungo stared at him in disbelief, his expression clearly showing shock. The friend smirked, saying he knew Kungo would be surprised. However, Kungo quickly shot back, saying that he was not amazed by the story itself, but by his friend's sheer foolishness. Mockingly, he remarked that his friend sounded like a primary school student who believed every ridiculous rumor he heard. The friend, offended by the insult, shouted that he was telling the truth and insisted that the story was real. At that moment, a girl approached their table. She cheerfully called out the friend's name. Gyung-ho greeted him. Kungo assumed she was there to drink, and she confirmed this, adding that she had come with her own group of friends. Soon after, her friends called her from a distance, and she waved at Kungo and Jung-ho, signaling that she would join them later. Kungo watched her leave and felt that her presence briefly shifted the atmosphere, making it calmer compared to the chaos he had been trapped in all evening. He wondered if the girl had panicked upon recognizing him, since she was the same girl he and Sung had seen earlier in the club room, doing cardio training with another guy. Meanwhile, Jung-ho looked concerned about her and openly admitted that she was exactly his type. He introduced her as Gyeong, speaking her name with obvious admiration. Kungo silently labeled Gyung-ho as innocent on the surface, but pitiful underneath, convinced that his friend suffered from severe delusions. Gyung-ho then casually added that, although Sung suited his personal taste more in terms of appearance, her personality had completely disappointed him. Hearing Sung's name spoken so lightly was enough to snap Kungo's patience. He abruptly stood up, calling Jung-ho annoying. Surprised by the sudden change, Jung-ho stared at him in confusion. With a darkened expression, Kungo announced that he was going to the washroom. Jung-ho grew uneasy, almost terrified, by how serious Kungo suddenly looked. Kungo's mood had already been ruined, but hearing Sung's name had completely pushed him over the edge. Near the washroom, Kungo unexpectedly ran into Gyeong. Trying to act normal, he told her that no one was inside and that she could use it if she wanted. However, she calmly replied that she was actually waiting for him. Her response left Kungo confused. Then, she bluntly asked whether he and Sung had seen her training with a guy in the club room earlier. Kungo was startled and immediately denied it. Gyeong smirked and pointed out that he was only pretending, since he had been hiding inside the cabinet at the time. After hesitating for a moment, Kungo assured her that he would not tell anyone and promised to keep it a secret. Gyeong stopped him, saying she was not finished talking yet. She confessed that she had been confused by what Kungo and Sung were doing there and jokingly suspected that they might have been having some kind of wrestling match. With a mischievous smile, she assured him that she would also keep the incident a secret, but only on one condition. She wanted Kungo to do cardio training with her right then and there. Kungo was stunned, especially because he knew she was dating Nam Wook. However, before he could ask for any explanation or protest further, she had already pulled him along. Without another word, the two of them began their unexpected workout session, leaving Kungo even more unsettled than before. After finishing their session, they stepped out of the washroom together. Gyeong calmly assured Kungo that she would not tell Sung anything about what had happened. Her confidence caught Kungo off guard, and he stared at her in surprise, unsure of how to react to such certainty. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Sung was lying alone on her bed, lost in her thoughts and preparing to rest. At that very moment, Kungo arrived at her place. Sung immediately tried to stop him from coming any closer, telling him that she was about to sleep and asking him to leave. However, Kungo insisted that he needed just 1 second. Before she could respond, he grabbed her gently by the shoulder and suddenly confessed that he had a crush on her. Song froze in shock, then hesitated before accusing him of going crazy and treating his words as a joke. She told him not to fool around like that. Kungo felt deeply hurt by her reaction, saddened by the realization that his feelings were being dismissed so casually. Soon after, the scene shifted as both of them were seen training together, pushing themselves through intense cardio exercises. Everything felt strangely vivid and emotional, until Sing abruptly woke up. She realized it had all been a dream. Her heart raced as reality settled in. Just then, doorbell rang. When Sing opened the door, she found Kungo standing there. His sudden arrival late at night immediately worried her, especially because a strong smell of alcohol surrounded him. Kungo explained that he had been out drinking with a casual friend and had gotten drunk without realizing how late it was. He added that he had come only to apologize for what happened the previous day, insisting that he remembered everything clearly. Before he could say more, Sung punched him hard on the chest. Even as he continued apologizing, she grew more irritated, questioning why he would put himself in such a pathetic state just to say something so pointless. Suddenly, Kungo began to feel sick. Without warning, he vomited on Sung and then fainted right in front of her. Struggling with both anger and exhaustion, Sung somehow managed to drag him to the bed and threw him onto it. She let out a frustrated sigh, muttering that he had come all the way to her house only to puke and pass out. After that chaotic night, the two of them unknowingly began another silent battle, this time an unspoken emotional wrestling match that neither of them was ready to confront. The next morning at school, Kungo walked through the campus with his head down, replaying the events of the previous night in his mind. He had gone to apologize, yet everything had only worsened. The thought of facing Sung that day made his chest tighten with anxiety. Just then, Gyungho approached him and greeted him warmly, expressing concern about whether Kungo had made it home safely the night before. Kungo responded sharply, his face aggressive and his tone cold, stating that he had returned safely and telling Gyungho not to worry. Gyungho then casually mentioned that their planned trip was still happening, adding that he assumed Kungo would not be able to join this time. That comment irritated and confused Kungo. He questioned how Gyungho could decide something like that on his behalf. Smiling knowingly, Gyungho reminded him that he had dropped Miss Cha Doyeon's class and had already been kicked out of the house. The realization struck Kungo hard. This was far more serious than he had thought. Later, Kungo stood nervously outside the professor's office, unsure of what to do next. After a moment of panic, he decided that he would kneel down and beg if necessary. When he knocked on the door, there was no immediate response. After a brief pause, the professor finally allowed him to enter. Inside, he saw Cha Do-yeon seated at her desk. She looked visibly confused by his sudden appearance, especially remembering his visit to her home earlier. With a tense expression, Kungo admitted that he had missed her classes and received an F in her subject. In a sharp, emotionless tone, she replied that there was nothing she could do about it. Hesitantly, Kungo suggested that there might still be some way to fix the situation. Curiosity flickered across her face as she asked what he had in mind. Gathering his courage, Kungo boldly declared that he was willing to do anything she asked, as long as he could erase the F from her subject. His confidence made Cha Do-yeon pause and think. She finally replied that they would do exactly what he was capable of doing. Kungo immediately agreed again, repeating that he would do anything necessary to restore his grade. For a moment, Do-yeon remained silent. Then she stepped closer to him and placed her hand against his chest, asking if he truly understood what she was implying. Kungo, flustered but trying to remain composed, replied that he assumed she would assign him extra work or additional assignments. Suddenly, Do-yeon grabbed his weapon, causing him to flinch in shock. She then stepped back, leaving Kungo frozen in place, lost in confusion and overwhelmed by his own thoughts. Cha Do-yeon suddenly spoke sharply, snapping Kungo out of his thoughts. She warned him not to space out and instructed him to listen carefully. She informed him that she would call him to her office the following week, and only then would she explain what he would have to do for her. Startled, Kungo immediately apologized and agreed without hesitation. He bowed deeply in front of her, expressing his gratitude with genuine urgency before leaving the office. As he walked down the hallway, Kungo silently scolded himself for speaking so recklessly to the professor. His mind replayed every word he had said, and embarrassment washed over him as he realized how foolish he must have sounded. Lost in these thoughts, he suddenly looked up, and there she was. Sung stood right in front of him. For a brief moment, both of them froze, their eyes meeting without either knowing how to react. The air between them felt heavy and uncomfortable. Breaking the silence, Kungo hesitantly mentioned that she must be there for an assignment. Sung paused, then nodded in agreement, confirming that she had come for the same reason. Relief flickered across Kungo's face, and he quickly added, almost too cheerfully, that he was also heading there for an assignment. With an awkward smile, he remarked that it might turn out to be exciting for the both of them. However, Sung did not respond. She continued walking quietly beside him, her expression unreadable. Kungo noticed her silence and immediately assumed that she was still angry with him. In his mind, it seemed only natural, especially after what had happened between them in the bathroom. The thought made him uneasy, and guilt slowly crept in.